attempted murder trial of a former minister. More on that.
Two guilty verdicts. Is this a case of justice, or is there still an appetite out there for more?
Oh, indeed, I think that justice has prevailed. I'm sure that many join me in believing that the judicial system did come through. If anything, the results of this trial give an important signal that the civil rights of Americans cannot be trampled on. And usually blacks, Afro-Americans, Latinos are usually at the brunt of police brutality. And I think that this sends a very loud and clear signal that civil rights will not be trampled upon. Yesterday, for the first time in a very unprecedented move, historical if you will, the Latino elected officials of Los Angeles County came together, putting aside all their differences of the past, and said, the welfare of Los Angeles County is the paramount issue here, and we're moving together to make this the city that is looked upon by the world as the melting pot, as the kind of city where we can all live in peace together.
Mr. Hershenson, it's a city that still may be armed to the teeth in anticipation of troubles. Is there, from your perspective, any sense of trouble still ahead?
No, I would think not, and I would just hope that we don't start right now blaming this on economic conditions rather than on the values and the personal responsibility of individual people. For almost a year, we've heard from political leaders, we've heard from so many that economics were at the root cause of this, and indeed there was a lot of discussion that I believe would be insightful, to say the least. Lately, during the past month, or particularly during the past 2 weeks, I'm more than happy to say that that kind of discussion has gone down to the bottom, and in its place has been discussion of having peaceful resolutions of all this. I certainly more than believe in the jury system in the United States, and I believe that the verdicts were heard by those in the jury who knew more than any of us sitting on this platform.
We have also, though, we've heard Mr. Coons, Sergeant Coons' attorney indicate that he wants a retrial or that he will appeal on the question of double jeopardy. How does that sit out there, Congresswoman Waters?
I don't know. I've not heard that discussion, and I suppose in a democracy, we have a judicial system that allows the citizens of this country to seek out justice in a fair and impartial way. And he has the opportunity to do what he feels he should do in his best interest.
Let me ask you this, Congresswoman, because there are some who will say, we had a judicial system that rendered a verdict in Simi Valley. And the public and a lot of others said that is the public, and a lot said that's not the judicial response that we want. So in some ways, you could argue that people, that the judicial system was forced into a second effort here.
No, you don't have the argument correct. This country has what I would describe as a safety valve. At one time in this country, we had local jurisdictions who did not prosecute. We had a lot of racism going on. We had people whose rights were violated deep in the South. They didn't have any protection whatsoever. We had mock trials. We had incidences where people really could not get justice. This business of the federal government being able to step in on violation of civil rights is like a safety valve, when in fact it does not appear that justice has been served. In the case of the previous trial, where you had a change of venue and you had a selection of a jury that came from a community that was not reflective, you had questions that were raised about whether or not Rodney King's rights had been violated, which gave us the opportunity to make a decision about whether or not the federal Justice Department should step in. They did that. And the civil rights prosecutors who were involved in this case took that argument and did a magnificent job. As a matter of fact, they did a splendid job. And they were able to show that at least 2 of those officers had violated Rodney King's civil rights.
Let me ask Congressman Torres, do you have a better police department now in Los Angeles as a result of this very difficult, painful period?
I think we do. I think that the crises of last year certainly brought to fore the need for a much more sensitive police department. Obviously, a new chief has come here. He has brought with him his expertise, his technology, and how one might put together the kind of police department that is much more sensitive to the community. And I think for those reasons, we would want to see the police continue in this vein. It's important that the police, the law enforcement in Los Angeles County and the city be supported. And as I speak, I know that the President of the United States is talking about enhancing the ability of policemen in the various cities across America to do a better job. And so, yes, I think this is played out well.
Mr. Hershenson, you concur in that in any way?
I think that the police department, working for the police department, and particularly the Los Angeles Police Department, is one of the hardest tasks in the world. I am terribly concerned about their own safety. If you watch the kinds of things that they have to do, the kinds of threats under which they've operated, the kinds of dialogue that's been used against the police lately, I just think that they're right up there with the top heroes of the country. And I think that in some ways there's some good in this, but in other ways there's bad in this as well, because their prime job is to ensure domestic tranquility, particularly, obviously, in I'm talking about Los Angeles County and Los Angeles City and the LAPD primarily. And I think that their job is, as hard as it was prior to all this, becomes much more difficult right now.
Thank you. When we come back, we're going to take a break. I want to turn our attention to some of those comments that President Clinton made today and raise the question of what can the federal government do to help out. Stay with us, please.
What's the hottest place on Earth? The Sahara? The Mojave? No, it's your home the day you're...
I have to blame the economic system. There is great deprivation in this city. There's great deprivation across the country. And the President's economic stimulus package seeks to reduce that problem. It seeks to instill once and for all and help to resolve what the anguish that cities and rural areas have suffered throughout the last 12 years. And I think it's cynical that the Republicans in the U.S. Senate are holding his package hostage, depriving millions of children, the homeless, the unemployed, and people who want to see this country move on again. And I believe that we have to blame the economic system. And I hope that the President is going to be able to prevail. I think he will, because the people want the change.
Congressman, it's now a $12 billion package, once 16. Of that, $4 billion is for unemployment. Let me come back to my original question to you. How much is there really in there for L.A., or is that not illusory that this package is going to stimulate your economy?
According to my latest calculation and based on numbers I've seen, Los Angeles, the general Los Angeles area, would benefit some $71 million in that package that would bring about, during the summer, for as an example, the thousands of summer jobs that are important to take people, young people, off the street. The transportation projects that are on the drawing boards are going to create jobs in this community. We're going to need to rebuild Los Angeles from the last uprising that took place here. And the money in that package is there. But unless we have that, nothing is going to happen, and we're simply going to perhaps see a long, hot summer, a case of Los Angeles uprising again.
Well, let me get Mr. Hershenson's response to that, since he thinks the economy is not the issue.
What was just said was inciting in itself. It is, and to make comments like that about a long, hot summer says something to those few people in the community who would like to have a long, hot summer. No, it isn't a matter of money. Los Angeles is a rich community compared to other communities. California is one of the wealthiest states in the nation. I believe now that it's number 9, and there's even argument that it's higher than that. I don't want to call on the people of Arkansas and Louisiana and West Virginia to chip in for us. We're not a welfare case here. I want the federal government out of the act, and I think what President Clinton is doing is going to be very harmful in the long run. I remember in 1965, when President Johnson proclaimed the Great Society and the war on poverty, and millions and, in fact, billions were thrown at it. Did it do any good? Look at us today. That was 1964. When we look towards the federal government, we are, in a sense, saying they are our parents. They're the father. They're the mother. They're the ones who should take care of us. We should take care of us. Did you see the Academy Award presentation a couple of weeks ago? I think that you saw an exhibition of luxury and riches there. We have a rich community in Los Angeles. We can take care of our own. Don't always look at dollars. Look at the values that are placed at people. Look at the kinds of things that are taught in the schools.
Let me bring in Congresswoman Waters, and let me ask you in this context, Mrs. Waters. Yesterday, I asked the Treasury Secretary Lloyd Benson what the backup plan is should the president's stimulus package not get through Congress. And Mr. Benson said there is no backup plan. Now, it's a real possibility the president won't get that full stimulus, so perhaps the backup plan does lie, as Mr. Hershenson suggests, back in the community.
Well, let me just say this. If the Republicans decide that they're going to gridlock Congress one more time and keep the president from moving forward with a stimulus plan that will get this country moving again, they're going to have to accept responsibility for having acted in a way that's going to harm millions of Americans.
Congresswoman,
the fact of the matter is...
Let me just stop you there, because you're talking politics, and I really would like to get your response to Mr. Hershenson's suggestion that this is something the community can do. Mayor Bradley today says it's time for the community to move ahead.
I would like for you to understand that the community cannot move forward in ways that Mr. Hershenson would describe without the kind of assistance that is being offered in this stimulus package. Of course, the community has many organizations, and they work very hard. It is very tough for them. They've been doing it without resources. The private sector has not been there, nor has the public sector been there. The fact of the matter is, this government is about to give $1.6 billion to Russia. I want somebody to ask, what is the community doing in Russia to help itself? Why do they need this government to help them? The fact of the matter is, the government does have a role. They do have a responsibility. It's not about welfare. It is about both the public and the private sector and the community working hand in hand, not only to move Los Angeles forward, but this entire country forward. It cannot happen with one entity alone.
May I respond to that, Charles?
Very quickly, because we need to take a break. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, just very quickly. The federal government's duty is for international affairs. The federal government, when you talk about $1.6 billion going to Russia, that is the duty of the federal government. When we talk about communities, that is the duty of the community. I want the federal government to be in... It's a silly argument, Maxine. It's the Constitution of the United States.
If you're telling me that this government has more of a responsibility to Russia than it does to the Bronx and Harlem and Philadelphia and St. Louis and Los Angeles,
the federal government,
then that's outrageous.
Maxine,
this money belongs to the taxpayers of this country. They don't pay their taxes for them to be utilized by everybody else except us. Whether we're talking about a rural community or an inner city or the middle class or the poor, they have a right to share in the riches of this government, and it's nonsense to talk about. We should only be dedicated to an international agenda.
I'm not saying only dedicated to an international agenda, but I'm saying that that is the job of the...
We'll be right back. Mr. Hershenson and Congresswoman Waters, and also to Congressman Torres at the end of that segment. I thank you all for joining us. We're joined now by Milton Grimes, who's also in our Los Angeles Bureau. Mr. Grimes was the attorney for Rodney King. Mr. Grimes, let me ask you this. If I'm correct, you've suggested that 2 guilty verdicts is not enough in this instance. Why, sir?
I didn't say it was not enough. I said that we were looking forward to having 4 guilty verdicts because we feel without a doubt that all 4 officers participated in that brutal beating March 3rd, 1991, and they all are guilty.
But this is a judicial process, sir. The court found them not guilty. When you say we, are you speaking for Mr. King, or are you speaking for yourself?
Mr. King and I have spoke at length about this matter, and we anticipated a guilty verdict on behalf of all 4 officers. I know the prosecution's evidence was sufficient enough to convict all 4 officers, and therefore I think we're entitled to have an opinion regarding the outcome of the case. And our opinion is that it was not satisfactory. We're disappointed that Officer Wynn and Officer Persino escaped a conviction.
When you say I'm sorry, Mr. Grimes, I'm going to have to leave you and return us to Natalie Allen for continuing developments in the situation in Los Angeles. Natalie's in Atlanta. Natalie?
This is CNN Breaking News.
And as we continue with our coverage of the verdict from the Rodney King trial, we go to L.A. and Mayor Tom Bradley, who along with Willie Williams, the L.A. police chief, is holding a news conference. Let's listen in.
Just been concluded. There is now a belief, I believe, that what the Chief and I and others have been saying for several weeks. Don't raise anxieties. It's going to be all right. We're prepared for whatever the outcome is. And just don't engage in speculation. We now have had the final word from the jury and the judge. I want to put something in context because some are saying, well, this is a time for rejoicing. The officers were found guilty. Let me tell you, 4 officers were charged, 2 were found guilty, 2 were found not guilty. I don't want anybody to suggest that this is somehow an indictment of the entire Los Angeles Police Department. It is not. There are over 6,000 officers, men and women of this department, who are out there doing their jobs each and every day, conscientious, abiding by the policies and the rules of the department and the laws of this nation. 2 officers were adjudged by the jury to have gone beyond the legal constraints laid down by our system of justice. The courts and the jury have responded. And now that issue is behind us. Let us recognize the importance of our police department, not just here but across this nation, and say that if there's some rejoicing, it is the knowledge that this is a system of laws, and we have now seen in this case fulfillment of the promise of the justice system in this country. And I want to raise my thanks to all law enforcement officers all over this nation who each and every day do their job according to the law. So we're not going to try to blame all of them, tar them with the same brush, that 2 have been found guilty and thus all are guilty. Not so. I think that we've now had an opportunity to see the community respond. And we've been telling you that we do not anticipate any violence or any problems such as we had last year. I still feel that way. We've gone through 4 hours since the verdict came in, and no problems. I expect that state of affairs to continue. We've indicated we're ready if something should occur. I'm pleased that thus far we have not had to call into action any of our law enforcement agencies or the National Guard. So I think that there is a sense of relief in this community, justifiably so. I hope that there will be no further efforts to raise the anxieties of the people. They deserve better. And I'm looking forward to this city now turning itself around and dealing with the real issues and the real problems that face us, not focusing solely on a trial of 4 officers, dealing with the problems of unemployment, of hopelessness, of hunger, of housing needs, and many of the other things that face this city and other cities across the nation. If we as a community come together on those positive challenges and our response to them, we're all going to be better off. Chief Williams?
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. My brief comments center around that, number one, I think most important to all the men and women who live and work in our city, and particularly to all the government workers that have put in very, very long hours, the last 24 hours, that right now today the city of Los Angeles is very calm, perhaps even more calm than it was this time last Saturday, the Saturday before. It's very, very important to point out that the deployment plans which were put in place last night, that culminated with a full deployment beginning at 6 a.m. this morning, will stay in place for the time being. Decisions will be made over the next 24 to 48 hours as events unfold, whether we stay where we are, whether we gradually break down. But I want to compliment the men and women in all the law enforcement agencies, but particularly my department, the LAPD, for the professionalism that they have shown throughout this very difficult and stressful period in the history of the department. And I also want to compliment the men and women who live in our communities, the men and women who work in our communities, because we recognize that as there are 3.2, 3.3 million people who live in this community, each of us can have our own personal views about what occurred nearly 4 hours ago. But whether we accept, reject, or have no view, it's the American way. If we don't agree with it, there are legal ways and there are proper ways to have redress. If you agree with it, then you should speak up and support the systems that we have in place.
Some of our local cable operators will be cutting away for a commercial message at this time. CNN live coverage of this news conference in LA will continue.
Of support from all across this community, from the men and women in the Valley, to the young men and women in South Central Los Angeles, East Los Angeles, to those young ex-gang members who are part of the truce-building process that's going on, to our elderly citizens. The men and women who live in this community have made a decision and made a commitment that what occurred last year will not occur again in the city of Los Angeles. And that's what I, as a new member of this community, as chief of police, am most proud of. It's a quiet city this morning. We hope to continue to be quiet. I was just downstairs in the communications. Our 911 are receiving less calls than normal. Our dispatchers are down. We hope that we don't have crises that have crime reduced in our community, but we will certainly take it and appreciate it. And to all the men and women in this community, I just want to say thank you. You've been great so far, and let's just continue to keep it up.
Chief Williams, when did you hear from the court about some announcement? And now that it's all in the past, did you know, in fact, it was verdicts from the jury?
I knew no more than anyone else. All I knew is that there was going to be an announcement at 7 a.m. This morning, and that's what we based our reactions on. I mean, I had no idea if there was going to be a verdict or if someone was ill. I know no more than anyone else knew.
And how was that relayed to you? By Judge Davies, or could you tell us?
I have had no personal communications with Judge Davies. That was delivered through an intermediary in the judicial system.
Chief Williams, what would you suggest to the people of Los Angeles on how they should spend the rest of their weekend? Should they stay home? Should they?
Well, I think the men and women of Los Angeles should go about their daily lives, go to school, go to movies, go shopping, get in the pool, do whatever they had planned to do if the sun comes out, get in the pool. But go about their daily lives and enjoy it. I mean, this community will always have crises. Hopefully not crises of this dimension. But we have to learn to live with those crises and live through those crises. And I would certainly hope that they'll be able to spend the rest of the day and have a nice dinner this evening, maybe a late one like I will.
Chief, was there one or two or three key things that you feel you implemented and did this time that was different from a year ago that helped keep this situation as it is now?
From the law enforcement component, I think there were several things that we did different. Early on...
For those viewers rejoining us following a local commercial break, CNN is bringing you live coverage of a news conference with the mayor and police chief of L.A. We also remind you that for a current update of the day's news, you can tune to Headline News. Now let's return to CNN's live continuous coverage of the news conference.
That came from the men and women inside the organization. They said, Chief, we'll do whatever you ask us, but we want training, we want the tools to do it. And we began to address that. And then thirdly, I think that we brought in the community, all the communities, very early on. We involved them in the planning. We involved them in the training. We allowed the community, both our friends and our critics, to be part of the planning process and to review what we were doing, to look at our less than lethal tools and other things. And then finally, we sent a message. It was very important to let the community know that if anything went awry, that the LAPD and the other law enforcement agencies would be prepared to support and defend them. But we also had to send a message to those opportunists that whatever the verdict might be, and we didn't know then that that opportunity was gone. So I think there were significant things done. There was more involvement with the police in the community. There was much more involvement and communication between the police department and the other law enforcement agencies and the other city agencies. And the culmination was what we've seen to date.
Chief, you said we're some 4 hours into this and things seem pretty calm. In your view, does the likelihood of trouble diminish as time goes on, or are you more worried about tonight, for instance, than you are daylight hours?
I don't place any particular degree of weight, whether it's day, afternoon, or evening. You know, last year, problems broke out within literally minutes of the verdict. So I think that the calmness that's here today certainly should be reflected through the evening and tomorrow. I don't place any special emphasis on overnight. Our deployment was based on having us in this current mode for at least 24 hours, and we're going to stay there.
Mr. Williams, Chief King said earlier today that he thinks this decision might make officers in the field think twice before using force, that it might cause them some hesitancy. Would you agree with that? Or?
Well, I didn't see Chief Gates' comments, but we train our officers from the time they're in the police academy until their last day on this department to think. We train them to think quickly, instantaneously, but if that means thinking twice or three times in a millisecond, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be able to analyze the reactions of the people they're dealing with, the surrounding, the tools that they're available to them, and then make decisions. So I don't know, I didn't hear his comments, so I can't say that thinking twice is negative or not. American policing has learned a lot of positives from what occurred nearly 2 years ago and in between. So all our agencies have changed, and that change, I think, is for the positive.
Two of these men were members, are still members of your department. Sergeant Kuhn and Officer Powell, they are under suspension, I believe, as is Officer Brasino. What action now does the department take against these three men?
There's a disciplinary process that still has to be completed against the three officers who are on unpaid leave, and that process will start sometime in the near future.
There are a number of influences on the city right now which could go any way that you might imagine. Right now, one of those influences is Daryl Gates on his radio program. How inflammatory, or do you think it has any type of a bearing at all on what may or may not happen in this city?
I want you to understand this. Daryl Gates is irrelevant to this issue and to the city at this moment. Any other questions?
Chief Williams, I'm
Yes.
assuming you were watching the reports of the verdicts with some anticipation. When it was read, guilty for 2 officers, what was your personal reaction?
I won't discuss my personal reaction simply because I am very likely going to be one of the final arbiters in the disciplinary system, and it would be inappropriate to indicate whether I did or did not have any conclusions already drawn.
Chief, assuming that this long ordeal is over, can you tell us if the LAPD is a better public safety agency, a better city department today than it was when this whole thing began?
Oh, unequivocally. I think the LAPD is a better agency and a better law enforcement agency. It's better because we've learned from the best and the worst of the last 2 years. It's better because we have recognized that we have to have specific plans and programs in place to deal with known events, fires, floods, the potential trials, civil disturbances. It's better because the management that was split all over the place has understood that we're allowed to have differences, but we have to come together and work together, and we have. And it's better because we have learned that while we have not completed the cycle, we have to reach down and work with and support those men and women that are out there working the 12 hours right now. And it's better because we have opened the doors to the diverse community that makes up the city and the county of Los Angeles, and we'll welcome them in. So while our work is not done and will not be done for years, we're hundreds of % better off than we were this time last year and this time 2 years ago.
This tells the voters about Prop A, this experience in the last couple of days.
You mean Proposition 1?
I mean Proposition 1, I'm sorry, yeah.
I think it tells the voters that if they want to see a strong, professional police department that has the resources to be available, not just during crisis, but every day, then the voters need to make a very tough and very difficult decision and vote yes on Proposition 1, as this new homeowner will.
Mayor Bradley, can you tell us what your personal reaction was and set the scene where you were when you heard the verdicts this morning?
I was in my office alone, and I watched the verdict and the discussions that followed. I then went outside to talk with members of my staff who came to work this morning.
Do you agree with the verdict? Do you think these two men, Kuhn and Powell, were guilty?
You know, I didn't hear the evidence as the jury did. I highly value our system of justice, and for the most part, I think that it does respond properly. And I think that the jury in this case had very difficult decisions, had a lot of pressure on them, but I think they came out with a fair and just result.
Prepared for in any way push the case for Measure 1? That you did such a good job with the officers you have now?
Do I think that how prepared we were the case? Well, the jury was...
do you think that how prepared you were and the department was for this? Do you think that in any way hurts the case with voters for Measure 1?
Oh, no. I mean, because I don't think that there's a voter or a resident in the city of Los Angeles that thinks we have enough police officers. I think the preparations that we now see in place over the last 24 to 48 hours point out that we're spending a significant amount of money. We have all but the sick and the injured and a few on long-term vacations working, that they're doing 12 hours a day, and that you cannot function long-term in that capacity. But I think what it points out to the voters is that if you have a department that's dedicated to do the job that's necessary, if you have the leadership that says we're going to put those officers in uniform and black and whites and put them out on the streets, then here is an example that was brought about for all the wrong reasons, but nonetheless it's here to show what we can do. Crime in the city is down over the last week for a number of reasons. Some due to police deployment, some due to the goodwill of the men and women of the community. And police deployment's goal is to reduce crime and reduce the fear of crime. And for a short period of time this week, we've been able to do that. Additional officers long-term can have that same result long-term. So I don't think that this is hurt in any way. You know, perhaps it's helped. We'll find out next week.
Will you be on heightened alert for the sentencing of the officers? Is that considered as inflammatory a situation as the...
We will evaluate future events as they come and make the appropriate decisions and appropriate recommendations, the same as we did moving up to today.
Does any cloud you have
Beg your pardon?
include the Denny case?
We already have a preliminary plan developed for the Denny case at the same time we were developing this one. We will make modifications and adjustments as that case finally goes to trial.
This one, Chief?
Mobilization costs, assuming it lasts 24 to 48 hours?
No, I mean, there have been some guesstimates around. I'm not going to get into the total dollars that it costs. We'll be able to establish it, but I will say, and I've said it before, that when I went to the leadership of council and the mayor and discussed what our guesstimates were then, the cost was never a factor in the deployment.
Is that Denny planning much different than what you did today?
It's the basics are the same, but clearly, depending upon the events of today and the events that occur between now and whenever that trial starts, will mean modifications and adjustments. But basically, having a plan, having training, preparations, communications within the city, communications within the county and state, and communications with the community, those pieces are the same.
Your Scheinbaum's comments cause any problems to either of you?
Mr. Who's? What, last night?
Yes, sir.
No, didn't cause me any problems, no.
Mr. Mayor? Same question.
It simply represented that Mr. Scheinbaum was uninformed and I think was irresponsible in the statements that he made. I'll be talking with Mr. Scheinbaum about this matter on a personal and private basis. Now, there are two council members who took their time to come here. I'm going to give them a chance to make a comment. All right. Councilman Browdy.
I was at the Emergency Operations Center all morning, and I must say that I was just heartened by what I saw. So much more organization than a year ago. So many people working cooperatively together. It just warmed my heart to see how, when we put all of our resources together in this city, we can become a very effective force. I sat in on the conference that Chief Williams held with all the department heads, and he went around the table and asked everyone what was going on, and they all thanked him for the notification that they'd received and the cooperation. So the spirit of moving together and the planning that has been done was very, very effective, and I felt very proud of our city and its resources to deal with a situation like this.
Councilman Zeb, your response.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, I personally am very relieved that this ordeal is over, that the city is living through it quite well. This is a representation that city government can work, does work. We have a very fine chief of police and a government that's in sync with the needs of the community. I also want to reiterate the words of Chief Williams. In order for us to have a sustained kind of law enforcement presence in this city over the long haul that we need to turn violence around in Los Angeles, we need to have the passage of Proposition 1 next Tuesday. This is a measure that will put 1,000 more police officers, additional police officers on the streets of our city. It's a very modest cost, less than $10 a month to the average homeowner of this city to put 1,000 more officers on the street. We need it. I would urge my fellow citizens to vote yes on Proposition 1 this coming Tuesday.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor.
You've been listening and watching a news conference in Los Angeles held by L.A. Mayor Tom Bradley, the police chief Willie Williams, and we just heard from two councilmen from L.A. Mr. Bradley saying there have been no problems in L.A. and that he doesn't expect any. And Willie Williams even saying there's more calm today in L.A. than there was last weekend as the trial in the case was about to go to the jury. Mr. Williams also said the full deployment of police officers on the streets will continue for now, but both praised the people of L.A. for keeping the calm and keeping the quiet, saying it's time to move on. Now, earlier, my colleague Charles Bierbauer was talking with Milton Grimes in Los Angeles. He is the attorney for Rodney King. And Mr. Grimes, we just heard Mayor Bradley saying it's over, and he's also called this verdict a true meaning of justice. But you were saying that you're disappointed that there weren't 4 convictions, that there were only 2. But why do you think that there were even 2 convictions in this federal case and that they weren't able to find convictions in the state case last year?
I think that the prosecutors in the federal case put on a much different case. They put on more evidence. Rodney King testified himself, and if I recall, I thought the mayor was disappointed in the Simi Valley verdict as well as myself and the President of the United States. I'm a little surprised at the mayor indicating that this was a satisfactory verdict to him, but he's entitled to that opinion. The reason I said it was not totally satisfying is because I think all 4 officers were guilty and are guilty, along with many of the other officers who were on the scene that evening. They are paid and they take an oath to protect and serve the members of this community. And that particular early morning hour of March 3rd, 1991, those officers did not uphold their duty. And that's including the other 23 officers who were present when Rodney King was being viciously beaten.
And where was Mr. King today as we all learned of the verdict?
I'm sure he's home and watching the news like everyone else in America with his family.
And did you talk with him? Can you tell us about his reaction to the verdict?
I talked with him late last night. As a matter of fact, we were both trying to figure out how we could sleep through the evening, but I have not had an opportunity to speak with him this morning. However, from last night's conversation, I can tell you affirmatively that we were both anticipating, because of what we know the evidence to be, that all 4 officers would be convicted. We feel that the evidence was there, and that's why I'm disappointed. I would also add that Rodney King's position is the same as it was in May of 1992, and that is he hopes for peace and calm in this community, and he does not want to see the pain, the suffering, and the killings that occurred after the last verdict.
Milton Grimes, Rodney King's attorney, we thank you for talking with us this afternoon.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We also want to tell everyone that Mayor Tom Bradley will appear again on CNN tonight on Newsmaker Saturday. That's coming up at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Also tonight, CNN will have a special, The Verdict. That's at 10 p.m. Eastern, a look at the Rodney King federal case and the outcome that we have all learned today. And we will continue in just a moment.
If this is how you think of Volvos, you may have the car to change your thinking. The Volvo 850 GLT.
Now at Century Hardware, it's our brand name yard and home sale, where you'll save on the durable 16-inch plastic toolbox from Acro Mills with fully interlocking hinges and padlock eye, just $7.99.
Yes, we can!
Get Anchor Swan's 5/8-inch by 60-foot WeatherFlex all-weather reinforced garden hose, just $9.99. Look for special savings now during our brand name yard and home sale.
Century Hardware, yes, we can!
Wheaton Worldwide Moving took Steinway's most prized piano on a year-long tour of the U.S. without a scratch. We can move what's most important to you, too. For our free money-saving brochure, call us at 1-800-248-4810 or see the yellow pages for the Wheaton agent nearest you.
This year, give your secretary an office with a view.
The Volvo 850 GLT was voted the best new car in the $20,000 to $30,000 class. Who are we to disagree?
Headline News. It's the one network with news, sports, and business reports every 30 minutes, 48 times a day. It's that simple. Turn it on, get the news. Headline News. A whole day's news every half hour. Check cable listings for channel numbers.
And here's a look at some other news of the day. Turkish President Turgut Özal is dead. He died of heart failure today at the age of 66. President Özal dominated Turkish politics for 10 years, supporting free market economic reforms and ties to the West. In Bosnia-Herzegovina, reports of intense fighting forced a UN convoy headed for Srebrenica to turn back. Local radio reports say the town is being shelled by Serbian forces from all directions. However, UN officials now say Muslim and Serb leaders have agreed in principle to a ceasefire around the town to begin at midnight. More violence in South Africa today as blacks continue to protest the assassination of ANC leader Chris Hani. Rallies were held around the country, and police say 2 black demonstrators were killed by a white gunman during a march near Johannesburg. CNN Weekend will continue in just a moment.